I'm going to hand over to Steve then. I think that's
great. Thanks, Lucy. So I'm Steve Hoey. I work at Leeds Community Homes with Lucy, and it's great to see so many people on this call. Thanks for all joining us. It'd be really interesting actually to, if you could put in the chat how you heard about this and where you're from, kind of thing. Then we'll all get a feel for where people are. People were asking earlier, you know, who knows each other, where are you from, and that kind of thing. It'd be really good to see that. So yeah, I'm going to just very briefly say hello and tell you a bit about the organisation, and then we're going to, most of the session is going to be hearing from people who are involved in community-led housing groups, tell us about their journey and things that they've learned and where they're up to. So that's going to be really great. And then we a chance at the end. I'm not sure how we'll do it, whether it'll be at the end of each presentation for questions. So we've got an hour, so let's crack on with it, and hopefully we'll all find it really useful. I'm looking forward to hearing from the groups anyway. I know that. So very briefly, Leeds Community Homes has been going 5 years now, and we are the enabler hub for community-led housing groups in West and South Yorkshire. And we're also developing some housing of our own. One development is in partnership with a private developer called Situ down on the Climate Innovation District. And another site we're looking at is in Mistress Lane in Armley. And we're also talking to other partners about potentially working with them to develop housing in the future. We're currently becoming, we're in the process of applying to be a registered provider. And that's meant that we've had to change our legal structure. In a nutshell, we were a community benefit society with a particular type of asset lock, which was the wrong type of asset lock to become a registered provider or housing association. So we've had to change our constitution ever so slightly. So Leeds Community Homes will still be a community benefit society and a community land trust. And we're also setting up a new subsidiary, which is going to be called People Powered Homes. And so we're going to be launching that on the 1st of April. That is a wholly owned company, wholly owned by Leeds Community Homes, and it will do all of our non-charitable work, including all the hub work that we do, the advice and support work and that kind of thing. So just wanted to mention that because you'll see some new branding coming out, social media channels, also a new little website for People Powered Homes. So there's there's 21 more people who won't be quite as confused when we launch that on the 1st of April. So yeah, if anyone's got any quick questions, I could answer them now, or by all means put them in the chat. Either way, and then we can move on to hear about some of our brilliant groups that we've been supporting around Leeds and the wider region.
Oh, Matthew's got his hand up there. Hi, Matthew.
Yeah, hi, Lucy. Thanks. Quick question about the situ things. How many units, what cost, and when are they going to be delivered, please?
Sure. Well, the original plan was that there were going to be 17 units, all flats, and there have been some very big delays on that scheme, unfortunately, particularly the flats. Post Grenfell, there were a load of new building regs that came in, and they had to go back to the drawing board on the design twice because the buildings were going to be over 18 meters tall, and they were going to have a lot of wood cladding involved in the design. So we're hoping we will be getting our first units by the end of this year. They're building a lot of houses have already gone up on the site, but the flats haven't actually started yet, unfortunately. And in terms of cost, we keep on regular conversations with Situ about that. We're the Section 106 affordable homes provider on the development, and that's an arrangement that's been come to with Leeds City Council, so that the final price of the units hasn't been agreed, but they will be discounted quite heavily to sell to us, and then we will be renting 9 of them at an affordable rent and selling 7 of them at a discounted price to the intermediate market. But the exact figures haven't been worked out on the rents or the costs of the units yet. Hope that helps. If you want to be in touch on email further, or if you want to sign up to our newsletter on our website, you get regular updates about that kind of thing.
Thanks, Steve. I was going to say, if people think of questions, maybe put them in the chat for now, and then we'll do the presentations and do a kind of a big Q&A at the end, if that's okay. So if you think of anything while you're going along, just bob it into the chat and I'll keep an eye on that. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Susan from Freedom.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm chair of Project Freedom. At our AGM in the next couple of weeks at the end of the month, we're probably going to change our name to Pride of Place Leeds. We work around Pride of Place living is our housing side of what we do, because we're also looking at an LGBT centre and some other possible projects. Just to say, we're talking about, when we talk about our scheme, we talk about 70 units for LGBT people. And we are in the process of becoming incorporated. We don't have a site, and we don't yet have a partner developer. But we do have a very good prospectus. We have a lovely website, and we've written a lot of policies. So we've been very busy this last year. And obviously prior to that, we did a lot of consultation with the LGBT communities in Leeds. So we're Leeds based. It was suggested that today I talk about diversity, but obviously I'll be happy to answer questions on the scheme as a whole. And first of all, diversity, by the way, I'm not doing a PowerPoint presentation because my technology can't quite support it. I would disappear altogether. So diversity for us, for starters, is the fact that the LGBTQ+ community is itself already diverse in terms of sexual orientation. So that's about who you're attracted to, and gender. So we already have a diversity to try and embrace in regards to being lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, questioning, queer. There are a lot more terms that I could include there. And then we also include gender issues. So people who are not cis, people who are trans, and people who are non-binary, agender, gender fluid, gender non-conforming. So it's what we sometimes refer to as the quilt bag of alphabet, the alphabet quilt bag. And what unites us is our experience of oppression. So homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, and general discrimination and disapproval. And a lot of people say, oh, it's not happening anymore, it's fine now, you can all get married. But actually, you know, we know there are still micro transgressions all the time, and sometimes bigger homophobic assaults and so on. There's still a lot of disapproval. And a lot of people don't understand how heterosexism affects us, and heteronormativity, and the whole gender binary. So that when people speak in terms of the population at large, inevitably constantly in terms of male and female and heterosexual relationships. And that sort of general environment and way of speaking and referring to people impacts on LGBT people, queer people, in terms of how they feel. And we still have to make decisions every day, every time we meet someone, every time we agree to do something like this about coming out to a whole bunch of new people. And particularly for older people, that is still pretty scary. One of the aspects of our scheme is to include care and extra care. It's a multi-generational scheme, but to include care and extra care. So we want to be very mindful of the experiences of older people. And, you know, any gay man in later life has lived through being criminalized for who they cared for and what they did. So many of the contacts we have spent time in prison because they were gay men. So what unites us is the homophobia, transphobia, and the attitudes that we still sometimes come across. Diversity is also about intersectionality. So it's also about, out of all those LGBT different strands of people that we bring together, many of us are women and obviously experience sexism, as well as the bi, homo, and trans phobias. We have, sexuality and gender issues go across all communities. So if you're Black African, Caribbean, Asian, Far Eastern, North African, Arabic, if you're darker skinned in any way, then you're going to be facing racism as well. And it's those combinations of things that we're very aware of and concerned about. People will also be Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and face oppression and discrimination and being misunderstood within the dominant culture, but also within their own smaller cultures, if you like, and family environments. So it works on a sort of macro level and a micro level. And in addition to that, obviously, disabled people, people with physical and or sensory impairments, learning disabled people, people with poor mental health. For many of them, as well as living with pain and exhaustion and the effects of medication, and society's disabling people and putting blocks in the way. And obviously with housing, we're very conscious that we need to be building lifelong homes. And if we're going to provide care and extra care, that it needs to be care and extra care that is LGBT friendly, that people feel comfortable with it. And I can answer questions maybe about some of that stuff later. We want to include young LGBT people. There's a high level of homelessness. Young homeless people are LGBT. And with older LGBT people, there's a very high proportion who live alone, have either poor or no family ties. And of course, many don't have children to support and care for them and visit. So there's a big issue around isolation. So the significance for Project Freedom is that the principles of intersectionality need to be really carefully established in our allocations policy. It's intended that there be mixed tenures. So some properties for sale and some social rented, and some co-ownership. But we're hoping to use a points-based system, as Chaco does, to try and, which will be, it'll be complex and it'll have to be very refined because it will depend what properties are available at the time, as well as what the mix of the community is at the time. So for now, we try to welcome people from all groups who face particular disadvantage, but they often have other battles to fight. So we do recognise that there's a reason why many of us in our group are white, middle class. People have lives to lead and to survive. So we're trying to ensure that we listen to those other voices and that we accept that there's a limit on people's energy and what they can manage to do in terms of the work that's needed. But most of all, we've got to find ways to ensure that a range of voices are heard. I've no idea how long that is in time, but those are the things I particularly wanted to say in terms of diversity.
Right on time, Susan.
Oh.
Exactly. Fabulous. So if anyone's got any questions for Susan, particularly, do write them in the chat. What we'll do is we'll do all 3 presentations first, and then we'll jumble up the questions. So we've got John from Eco-Holmes and Holmfirth next.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Queening. I'm a civil engineer by background, project manager. As I mentioned earlier, we've really been involved in looking at, if I just bear with, I hope you can all see the screen, in looking at housing for the last couple of years, coming out of that film I mentioned, Dispossession. I actually live in Holmfirth, south of Huddersfield, in the Kirklees area. As you can see by the photograph there, it's essentially semi-rural, about 5,000 people in the Holmfirth itself, and about 30,000 in our parish area. And we basically are looking at that whole of that parish area. Okay. What I'd just like to speak about who we are as Eco-Homes. We're actually, our official name is Holme Valley Community Land Trust, but we're trading as Eco-Homes. You can see the, and what are our aims and objectives, and then something about finding and delivering sites, where we've got to on that, and also about community engagement. And then I'd like to end up with some concept schemes that we've got and how we're going to try and make them happen. Okay. Well, who are Eco-Homes? Well, we are, as we've said, we're a charitable community benefit society. We're from Huddersfield, just south of there. We were set up just over a year ago in about 2019. We've got 9 of us on a management board at the current, varying backgrounds and expertise. We're basically looking to provide affordable, low energy homes owned by the community, for the community. We've got these twin pillars, if you like, of our prop. One is affordable homes, but the second thing is actually low energy. It's actually trying to build homes for the future, recognizing with climate change is one of the biggest challenges we've got, that there's also an important thing there. We recognize that we're part of this growing movement, and I'm really pleased to see that there's a lot of support and a lot of things around for it. And essentially, we're trying to build homes which are fit for the future. That's one of our sort of mottos. Okay, there are some affordable homes near us, and these are sort of typical examples you might be able to see from here. We're in an area where it's a challenge from the point of view of they're all stone built, classical sort of Pennine towns, small, compact. In the old days, they built them with lots of space, as you can see there. More modern now, they're all back to back, almost very, very close. Okay. talking about affordability and availability. There's a lot of facts and figures on here, but essentially what that is trying to show you is that the Holme Valley is actually an expensive area for housing within Kirklees. Very simply, if you look at house price to income ratios, 7.7 compared with Kirklees at 5.4, Leeds 5.5. York is one of the worst areas in around here, but which is up there. But it's this problem. We are in an expensive area. And when you look at, for example, at what our average resident has got to do at 27k salary, he's got to be earning his potential for a mortgage to buy a house is 100 to 150k, much less than the 250k, which is the average price in our area. And when you look at, we did a survey on using, for example, Rightmove. Only 6% of the houses in the area were actually less than that 120,000, compared with 15 for the whole Holme Valley area and 26% for the whole of Kirklees. So we are a difficult area in terms of finding homes within the valley. And similarly, on a rental basis, we have the same challenges. We've done various surveys have been done, not for us. Kirklees' own survey, its strategic housing market survey in 2016 as part of the local plan, highlighted a shortage of affordable housing and also small homes, 1 to 2 bed homes, and not enough of them. People can't downsize because there's nowhere to go to. A survey of young people by Holme Valley Vision, who is a local networking, top priority was more affordable housing among young people. The neighbourhood plan consultation 2017 area, 70% of people said we need more affordable housing. And we've done our own survey online using MailChimp, and 80% of the people that we got said they need more affordable housing, and 45% said they knew somebody who was in housing need. So it's a real issue in our area. Well, that's the affordable housing, trying to make the case for that. Why low energy housing? Well, I think we all recognise in times of climate change, we need to reduce our carbon emissions. Domestic housing is 30% of our local valley carbon emissions. Reducing heat losses and things by having better insulated, airtight homes is a way of achieving that. And obviously, you can also save money. A great thing about affordable housing, if you actually make it low energy, is actually not only to reduce well, we'd like to reduce the capital cost, but typically you can also reduce the running costs. It's much more efficient to run these. And also it's well known, and people who live in passive houses have said, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, because you don't live in a stuffy home. It's ventilated, its energy is recovered in heating, and it provides you a more comfortable environment. It's a different way of living. It's just quite a challenging, interesting, but there are a lot of benefits there. So, and when you look at traditional housing in this country, conventional housing, it's a disaster. There's a performance gap between what people actually design, or the architect design, and what's actually built. There are lots of figures around to show the difference there. It's very traditional. It's not building for the future. We're running out of trades in this country. You can't find good builders in the same way. And also, we all know that you get a lower capital cost, but the whole life cost is higher. It's an inefficient system with some major changes needed. We had an opportunity when Cameron's government tried to make it in 2016 that we were going to go for zero carbon, but against the pressures from the building industry, they pulled the rug underneath that and rejected it. You go for low energy housing, and passive housing is a well-known standard for that. There is a cost premium, but the more you do it, the cheaper it becomes. And there's a lot of evidence around to show that. You get low running costs, you get healthier environments, and also the building techniques you're using are actually better. Modern methods of construction, MMC, factory built, so that's C2 that Steve Hoy mentioned. They're a classic sort of form of modern methods of construction. Increasingly, they're growing, and we'll see much more in the future. The challenge is that retrofitting is difficult, and the real difficulty for this country is that 80% of the homes we need in 2050 are already built. We only need 20% more new homes there. So it's what we're going to do about those other 80% of homes. That's a real challenge for us. this is just a sort of run through a passive house. It's basically a fabric first of all. When people tell you to put renewable energy in, great, but actually deal with the fabric first. Get yourself an airtight fabric surround, well insulate it, so you reduce your leakages out, and then reduce your drafts, have a balanced ventilation system, recover the heat from that, very efficient, and the passive house is the gold standard in that area, but there are other standards and will increasingly. The government are bringing in a future home standard in about 2024. They're about to start consultations on it, and that will actually change the current building regulations to the better. But it's a difficult time for politicians. There's a lot of money going to be involved in making these changes. Our business model, how we connect the two together, the need for affordable housing and also trying to get these low energy homes. Well, our concept is that land cost is roughly 35%, 33rd of the cost of that. That's pretty well known. In our area, you want to buy a building plot for a detached house, 100,000 to 150,000 is about the going rate. If we can save that somehow, which is what we're saying, and we can do it even a traditional build, and we add a premium on here for a green build, and we're allowed to say up to 15%. If you take those and add them together and you manage to get the land at either a nil cost or a very low cost, you can actually get it below this 80% of the open market value, which is the government's denominator. Can't say it's right, but it's a denominator for what is an affordable housing. And we're working on that premise. We are looking basically to try and access land for various means for new build at zero or low cost as being a way forward. When we're talking then about finding and delivering sites, we are looking at the moment as Eco-Homes. We've been going just over a year. We've been talking with the council, the parish council and various others. We have had a good relationship with the Kirklees Council. We have been offered some sites to look at, what they call windfall sites. Some of them are challenging to develop, but we have some opportunities there. We're also looking at local benefactors, the people who have got land that maybe they're prepared to put into the community. The concept of, it's been particularly well developed in the southwest, where small rural villages have got people to give them land or get land and provide housing that they rapidly need. We've also been looking at delivery options in terms of that. We're actually, the two options we've got open to us, one is to self-deliver, and that is an opportunity. Holme Valley, one of the CLTs near us in the Hebden Bridge is actually delivering its own, and I believe perhaps Leeds are as well. The other option is to work with a housing association, actually do a development lease. We've been getting some help from Andy Lloyd and some ideas around there as to that. And we've actually managed to find a friendly housing association who's very keen to work with us, and also is being very green in terms of gets our model in terms of green build, and we're in discussions with them over the last 6 months about working that forward. We still haven't made a final decision, but it's a very positive approach. We've got one site we're particularly looking at the moment. We haven't gone public with it. We're not in a position to do so yet, but we think it's, and I just want to talk briefly about the planning process and the opportunities there. What the opportunity is to test whether we can get it through in terms of a pre-application, going to the planners, looking at what has to be done, looking at the issues, both in terms of the condition of the site, in terms of its buildability, and also in the case we're looking at, it potentially could be in Greenbelt and how you get that through. The exception site route is one that is open to community homes. It's there in the national planning guidance. It is by definition exception. By exception, there's both the rural exception and also I think in the urban areas there are specific first home opportunities. It's challenging because you have to demonstrate a need, you have to demonstrate the exception, and we will have to demonstrate quite hard, we believe, the need and the demand for affordable housing within our area. We are in a community of 30,000 people, but we have lots of small things. The community we might be looking at is 3,000 to 5,000. In that sort of area, you have to be able to answer both the cases, the wider need and also the local need and that. And also this whole area about going forward, we're all told that once we get a site available for planning, once we get planning permission, easy meet, you know, the money will come forward, you know, having a site and also having planning permission on it is a good way forward. But to get there, it's costs at risks. We've looked at how we do that and what the costs are, and that's challenging for us. In terms of finance and relation to that, we were fortunate in getting a startup grant from the housing of about £10,000. That's kickstarted us in the last year. We're now into the next stage of having to look for funding for taking it forward for planning, and that is the order of 100,000 plus, we think, in terms of doing that. So we're having a look at that. We have found a potential source through CAF Venturesome, who basically are likely to be able to aid us in terms of funding and minimise the risk, but that's more of a loan as distinct from a full grant. But there's an opportunity there. So we're actually at that stage at the moment of just talking to them. We think we probably can come forward with a site within the next 6 months, and then we'll be into the really challenging area. The challenging area is a community engagement side, which I'm just going to sort of carry on with. We feel as a CLT that we need community support to back us. We're not going to drive through a site that doesn't actually carry the community with us. We also think we need to build up our membership and subscribers and build that. And it's important that we can demonstrate that. We're not going to get community support, but we can demonstrate that we've got that. And having a subscriber list or a membership list, we currently have about 65 on our membership and about over 200 subscribers to our sort of email list. And we're currently also working about a communication strategy. We've done a lot. We were going to have a big public meeting about launching ourselves almost a year ago on the 30th of March, but that got kicked into touch with COVID. So no public meetings, we haven't had any since. We're obviously using our personal contacts and local networks. We've got some quite good connections with local people. We've built ourselves a website, and that was help from the startup grants. And importantly, for our engagement, we use Zoom webinars. We actually organised about 12 over the summer, 12 webinars with the community, and got groups in and talked to them about what we wanted. And we had themes around homes for families, homes for older people, green homes, location of sites, and we got quite a lot of feedback from that. We also have gone out onto surveys. We've used MailChimp for they do for the interested. You can put together a free sort of a questionnaire, and we got 120 people replied to our questionnaire in a week before the end of last year. We've also using mail shots in terms of, we've got a MailChimp newsletter system that we send out. And also we tried using Facebook ads to target our areas, focused on the Holme Valley area within 17 kilometres, and use that to get messages out and also to run the survey. We're also trying to put in the press articles, trying to put local TV, not very successful there, but we've certainly been able to get out various press articles there, all to try and to do all that. And if I was to say overall, we've been quite successful at getting them converted into our. Where we haven't been as successful is getting younger people involved and also reaching the people that are difficult to reach. And it is a challenge. We need to grow that. So it's quite a challenge for us to sort of get the message out there and get it to the sort of people. One of the things we're trying to do on the community is actually, can we get housing need stories? We can get lots of people who say, yeah, we support you, but trying to get people who say, I'm really desperate for a house, and get their story and get them to come over, it is a challenging area for us to work on. Okay, just to sort of finish up, what we've also done, because we didn't have a site, what we decided to do was go for a concept scheme to put forward our ideas and use that to promote ourselves, create a bit more interest. And I'm just going to go through those 5 to sort of finish off with in terms of what we did. We produced, first of all, what is a Eco-Holmes, what we are, and it just puts out in a very jazzy, sort of snazzy, media-friendly version of, get rid of that, excuse me. Sorry. Just what we do, and it's got lots of things in there of interest, and we did these as basically we're going to do these as A1 boards, which we actually could then use these to have a display, but obviously we haven't been able to go out and do it. So we're now looking at how we do this, either online or things, but there's lots of things here for us to be able to engage with the community generally, and also on a specific site. What we also have put forward is a concept scheme, and there's again a lot of information on here about what we wanted to do. We saw it very much, and I'll just go through these blocks. A small communities, 5 to 25 units, like small clusters. We see terraces, and our feedback that we got from our Zoom session, it was the smaller end of the market. It was the 2-bed sort of places we were looking at. That's where also where the shortage of homes is in the Holme Valley area. We wanted to give it a community feel in terms of the meeting areas, and we've been to one local, and actually it's in Marsden near us, and they've got a very good example where the people really do sit around outside in the summer talking and creating that, and we see that areas like that are quite important. We also wanted to minimise the car parking, regain the streets was one of the messages that we got, make them fit for people and put the cars on the edge. We're not proposing to provide any garages for people. If you've got a car, there'll be space, but it'll be on the edge of the developments. We also want to be close to the community, access to shops, public transport and everything else. And also we wanted to encourage footpaths and cycleways through the site. Again, get people away from cars, back into, and also be able to communicate. So, and there's lots of ideas on there about recycling, about growing spaces for people, for wildlife wellness areas. So we want and play areas being visible from homes, connecting the community together is what we were trying to do with our housing as well.
Hi, John. Sorry, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to cut you off there because we're
okay. Well,
a little bit pushed for time.
They're available to see on our website if anybody wants to see them. We did this about more information about the individual homes, about the passive house. We also done examples of CLT to show it has been done before, and then low energy housing, that's been done before as well. So and then I'm done.
Brilliant. What we can do is I can circulate after links to all the sites and everything for each of the projects, so we can follow up on that. I'm going to pass over to Bill and is David as well? And then Dave?
Okay, I'm going to share a screen as well. There's lots of slides, but I'm not going to show many of them. Right. Hang on. Any of you who are familiar with Chaco will have seen this before. Can you see that all right? So this is an overview of our project, and we're probably about half built now. I went down to the site today at the bottom of Roundhay Road, opposite the Tesco filling station, and they were putting they had the top floor joists on these, I think on all of the buildings now. So we hope in the next week or so we'll be getting the roof trusses on, and that'll be exciting stuff. So as you can see, it's got some of the ideas that John was talking about, but this is a co-housing community. So in addition, on the ground floor of this block here, we have the ground floor is what we call a common house, and So we've got shared cooking and eating facilities and a laundry, a couple of guest rooms, and nearby there'll be a workshop, and the gardens are all shared here. So it's one big garden. And the community is run as a cooperative. So we're all landlord and we're all tenant. And but in order to make the finances stack up, it's about it's mixed tenure again. So this thing about how affordable can we make it? And because we're in Chapeltown, we have to be really careful to make sure that you know, the houses are within reach of people. If there are people in the streets around who look at them, we don't want to be the finances to be what puts people off. It might be me that puts people off, or the people, but we want it to be within the financial reach of everyone. And so we've got we're doing some cross subsidy. Some of the houses, some of the units are a shared ownership. Most of them are shared ownership, and some of them, my wife and I are going to be buying 99% of our unit, which is on the bend there, and but the other 1% we're going to be paying as rent to the community, and that means we can be members of Chapeltown Co-housing cooperative, because housing co-ops essentially you need to be paying rent to them. You can't really have a housing co-op with 100% ownership. Well, I don't think you can. And the other thing, of course, is it means that we can't just sort of sell our unit on the open market because it's not 100% ours. So we have to negotiate with everybody else there and decide together, you know, if we want to move on, which is probably unlikely given my age. But if we want to move on, we'd have to negotiate with everyone and come to a consensus about what how we were going to do it. So having built all these houses, we need to keep them all as part of the cooperative. And it helps that the planning permission we've been given requires that all these units remain as co-housing in perpetuity. So that's what this area is designated as, which is quite a bit of protection for us. It gives added protection against people sort of falling out with us and just sort of selling off their units. I could talk about all sorts of things, but let me just run through. This slide shows fairly near where we are. So if any of you know Chapeltown, this is the bottom end of Spencer Place and the health centre, and we're just behind it, over to the left there. Let's see. Here's some of you may know Lilac over in Bramley. There's another co-housing setup, and they've provided great inspiration for us, but they have a different sort of financial model altogether, which requires people to be able to put down 10% of the value of their units, and that just wouldn't work in Chapeltown because plenty of people around here just don't have capital. So which is why we've come up with the mixed tenure idea, and all the rents that we've got are, the maximum rent is set at the local housing allowance level. So if you're on benefits or universal credit, then at least in theory, it's within your financial reach. But of course, everything's always more complicated than that, but that's the idea. And just to show you another co-housing setup, which is like ours in being linear. This is Lancaster co-housing on the banks of the Lune, but instead of the River Lune, we've got the A58, which is not quite so desirable. In fact, it's a pretty rubbish site. There used to be this building on it, and we dithered a bit about whether or not to keep it and sort of refurbish it and live in there. But if it actually worked out £300 cheaper to let the council knock it down and to rebuild from new, which then of course gives us more options for how we build. So we're not quite going to passive house standards, but we're going the next sort of notch below, which is AECB, the Association of Environmentally Conscious Builders. So where passive house gives you maybe an 80%, typical 80% reduction in carbon emissions compared with a non-passive house type, AECB gives you a sort of 70% reduction. So it's the poor person's version of passive house, if you like, which was a sort of as green as we could get on the finances available to us. And just talking briefly about finances, one of the things that sort of astounded me, astounded all of us really, is that within Chapeltown, which is not known for having lots of cash floating around, we did a loan stock. It's a bit like a share issue, but you don't get any voting rights. We launched a loan stock campaign asking people to invest in us for a few number of years, short-term loans basically. And altogether now we've raised over £900,000 this way. And that's Chapeltown, from our friends, family, and people who believe in community-led housing and what we're trying to do, which is, you know, really heartwarming. It's not only heartwarming, it actually helps us to pay the builder. We've had a few hiccups. Sorry, let me just slow down a bit here. That's more or less what the terrace looks like at the moment. That was taken a week or so ago, and it's more or less the same at the moment. The building at the right-hand end, which belongs to Unity Housing Association, our development partners, now has the roof structure on and solar panels, and they've got the roofing felt down, so that's nearly finished. And the bigger Unity Housing Association block out of sight on the right is now almost, the structure is effectively complete. So I could wrap it on for ages, but I think probably this would be a good time to stop. And then if anyone's got any questions, then put them in the chat or what have you. Yeah, okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Bill. I think we've got a question coming for you, actually. What happened to the building materials from the demolition? Was it recycled or reused at all? Do you know?
We tried to find out. We tried to get some information from the council about the demolition, and worryingly, they'd lost a lot of the paperwork on it, which is a bit scary considering that the whole demolition project cost about £900,000, and that for the council to manage to lose stuff about how much asbestos there was there and all the rest of it is a bit worrying. So I can't tell you that. But if we'd had any say in it, we would have asked for it to have been recycled, but it was under the control of the asset management department.
We've got another question. Are all the properties allocated already?
No, we've probably got about a quarter of them left, and one of them, the one on the, if you remember that first picture I showed you, the sketch, the building on the extreme left is a 5-bed house of multiple occupation. So most of the community will be sort of long-term residents, but we can afford to have more transient people, maybe students sort of like in a student-y type house. And that at the moment that's empty, but we think that's probably going to be fairly easy to fill at the last minute. And we've got sort of 4 or 5 other properties that for either for renting or for shared ownership that we need to fill most of them in the next year. We're due to move in by next February, end of next February.
Brilliant. I think we've got a question for Susan. Oh, it's a long one. How are you addressing the reaching harder to reach people, especially LGBTQ plus people? Have you managed that? There's a very long question there if you want to read it as well.
Neil's question, yes, I read
yeah.
Yes, it's less of a question, more of a big problem.
Yes, I don't think I can answer it. I mean, the most important thing is to be well informed, and for the team to understand what the issues are for different people to have their voices heard, and then to be just thoroughly welcoming. And you know, it's a struggle for us, the same as it is for other groups, but also to acknowledge that, I mean, you know, I myself might never live in this complex, but I want to put the time in and I'm interested. And I'm retired and I'm fortunate enough to have the resources to do that. So some of the time it will be about trying to create something that works for everybody. But you can't always expect everybody to get involved. It's very different from a small co-housing cooperative in that regard. I can't say more really, but I think Neil's right, it is a major issue for all groups.
We were talking earlier about allocation policies, and maybe that's to all three projects, to maybe give us a little bit of
I think Chaco's got a very interesting system if Bill wants to outline it.
Yeah, okay. We because we're in Chapeltown, we realized it would be probably quite toxic and not what we wanted to do anyway if we ended up with something that looked like a gated middle-class white community within Chapeltown. But those of us who have started the project, although being fairly in the middle of the white middle-class demographic, that's not why we live in Chapeltown. That's we like the area. We got plenty of friends, of quite a diverse bunch of friends, and so we immediately started sort of putting the word out through all the networks that we could, and we agreed fairly early on that we would try and aim for certain minimum numbers. So effectively, we've got quotas. We've set aside five houses or flats for people of within different age bands, people LGBT plus, people with disabilities, people of different, very broad ethnic groups. It's a fairly clunky system, but it's certainly better than doing nothing. And although it's sometimes hard to explain it to people, we still think it's worth doing. It has actually, yeah, we vary in our success on this. So if you catch us on a good day, we're probably down to, and it tends to be ethnicity that's the most visible in Chapeltown. So all the other sorts of diversity, including education and working class, middle class, all the rest of it. But that tends to be the focus because of the sort of area that Chapeltown is on the ethnicity. And so we have, in the area we're building, I think at the last census, or the 2011 census, it was about a 13 to 16% white area, and we're way above that, but we're on a good day, we're sort of getting down to sort of 60 to 50, mid-50s percentage of white. And then, of course, the challenge is to find people with the skills and the commitment to the area, and get everyone fully involved, because an awful lot of the skills are just not particularly, they're not easy to find in an area like this. Yeah, so it's a perpetual struggle.
John, do you want to talk about your?
So we developed an allocation policy because although we're not needing it in the short term, we felt we needed it to be able to identify to people what our, and we were providing housing for local people in the valley. We accepted that it was going to be younger people as well as older people might want to decide. But where we've come down to is that we accept that I think the direction we're going on is that the people in housing need will be those within the Kirklees overall area on their system. They already have a system for allocating people who are in housing need, their sort of user-chooser system. And we will overlay on that the local housing need, i.e. somebody in our area will get priority over somebody who lives in North Huddersfield, for example. And when we looked at what was important to us, it was to live and work. We may have people in our valley who actually can't live in the valley, either they're not immediately here, but they do work in here, or they could have a connection. So we've come down to actually saying it's a connection with, and then we set up various categories and weightings for these, and the detail is going to come later when we get down to it. But it is based on trying to have a system that is not too prescriptive, but at the same time sets out some criteria that you clearly evaluate people on. Because from what we hear from talking with other CLTs is that the demand could be oversubscribed, so you need to have sort of a project for doing that. But we try to set that out, and also what we've found is that through our discussions with a housing association, if we partner with a housing association, so basically they ultimately finance and build the schemes, build the housing, then it has to suit them as well. And it just so happens that in our discussions we are of a similar minds as to, and a similar, they're accepting that like the Kirklees system would apply, but it's also that there should be a priority for local people rather than people within their wider network, if they may have people elsewhere, for example, who are in house need. But so we're getting and as a CLT, we have to decide what your priorities are and what's important to you, and certainly in terms of developing partnerships. You never get everything you want, but you come down to the sort of prioritization. So we feel we're getting there. We're not quite there yet, but I'd say we did start quite early on with this allocation policy, but there's further work to go in applying that.
We've run over a couple of minutes, but I've just got one final question for all three, and I suppose that's about are you looking for new members? Are you actually actively recruiting for new members and things at the moment? If so, have a shout out.
Yeah, well, we are, as I said, we've still got maybe a quarter of our units to fill, and we're going to be working quite hard on that in the next few months, because we're due to move in, as I say, next February. So we need to get our full quota up for then. Yeah. But of course, anyone who's thinking of applying, you've then got to negotiate all the hurdles of our allocations policy. And 2/3 of the people need to have a strong commitment to Chapeltown. So that's another thing that I hadn't mentioned before. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as Eco-Holmes, we would welcome sort of more members. I mentioned we have about 65. When we developed a membership policy, and we had a bit of a debate inside, because a number of CLTs have put sort of various hooks and things into being a member. You've got to live in the area, work or something. we actually decided not to, because on balance, we felt that the people who were interested and had a connection with the area would want to join in any case. We didn't expect, although there was a possibility that we could get members coming from America, from New Zealand, because with the internet, you can clearly find that sort of thing. We haven't found that. In fact, the majority of our members, I would say over 90% are actually within the HD9 postcode, which is our sort of, so that's worked for us, but there is also that. So in terms of membership, we are encouraging local people, but we're not actually prescriptive in terms of excluding people, as they do in some CLTs. There's some CLTs you get different categories. I've seen 3 categories of membership, in fact. So we don't have that. And also, in terms of where we're at the moment, it only costs £1 to join us. So you say, why wouldn't people spend £1? Well, it's surprising. A lot of people will be subscribers, and we've got 200, but we've only got 65 members. And for £1, you could join and vote in the AGM. And as one of our members, Matthew, has said, for £1, you can own our housing. You know, that's what you get as being a member. You are part of the community to own our housing. But so we're pushing that. But the reality of it is, when you look at it as a CLT, the time will come when we want members who will actually also could be investors. If we go for community funds, I happen to also be part of a community wind turbine, and for that we have something like 180 members who invested over £600,000 in it. We'd like to go there as a CLT, but we're not there yet. So it's only a £1, and that's a joining fee basically. But so you could also later, and this is what I think Calder Valley CLT have found, is that you actually, they're a good base to work from, and those people maybe later come in as investors and significantly increase your, through a community share offer for your funding. So at the moment, tactically speaking, a subscriber is just as important to us as a member, because they have an email that they've given us, and we can demonstrate with that we have support. So that whether the members or subscribers, they are demonstrable support that the community is interested in what we're doing and what we're saying.
Brilliant. Susan?
Well, through our website, we welcome people joining our mailing list to get information from time to time. We don't bombard people with monthly mailings or anything. And then we also welcome LGBT plus volunteers to come on board to work on either the housing side or the centre side. And we, you know, when somebody expresses an interest in that, we have a conversation with them about what it is they want to do and what they're interested in. So yeah, we do welcome people to get involved, especially if they've got time and energy and a few skills.
Brilliant. What I'll do is I'll put out all the links to everyone's websites, so that if you do want to join or find out more, you can do that. Yeah, we've just run over by 7 minutes, which isn't too bad. So yeah, thanks so much, everyone. It's really, really interesting to hear about all your projects, and thanks everyone else for joining us as well. Everyone, thumbs up, yay. Yeah, and I'll send out an email with all the contacts on. And we have got the video, hopefully, if it's recorded properly, that I'll put up a link to as well, so other people can watch your amazing presentations. Okay, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for organising us, Lucy.
No worries, it's great, really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Okay. Bye. You're all silent.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Lucy. Brilliant. Well
Okay.
done. Well done.
Right. I'm gonna end it, I think.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lucy.
Now.
All right then. Take care.